me to greet His Excellency Ambassador Kostyantyn Gryshchenko and his wife Natalia, who are visiting Brigham Young University and the state of Utah these last, yesterday and today. They arrived the day before. And it's a pleasure to introduce him to you. 10 years ago, a new state was reborn in Europe. The Ukraine achieved its independence. It became instantly a nuclear power, which it has since divested itself of. But it is one of the largest countries in Europe, geographically the second largest. It's one of the five largest in population. And there are many challenges that attended this change. And the Ambassador Gryshchenko has played a very key role in the new state and in its relations with other countries. He was educated during the time of the Soviet Union in the Institute of International Relations in Moscow, which was a very premier institution for training Soviet diplomats at that time. And he became a specialist in arms control and in the Soviet Foreign Ministry and also in the Soviet mission at the United Nations. And his first visit to Utah was under those auspices. But with the coming of the new Ukraine, he has played a very key role in the history of the new state. He was involved in a major way in the arms of the negotiations concerning the disposition of nuclear weapons, in which Ukraine made the decision to divest itself of its nuclear arsenal that it had inherited from the Soviet Union. And these negotiations between the United States and Russia particularly, he played a key role in some of the main challenges between Russia and Ukraine. The chief negotiator in the Black Sea Fleet, the disposition of the Black Sea Fleet, he played a very key role as the head of the delegation in those negotiations. He's been a deputy foreign minister. He's been an ambassador to NATO. He's been an ambassador to the Benelux countries. And now for more than a year, he has been the ambassador of Ukraine in Washington. It's with great pleasure that I introduce to you then today Ambassador Gryshchenko.
Thank you so much. For me, it's a great honor and privilege to be today here at your university. As it was mentioned, I was here 10 years ago, a little bit more than 10 years ago, not here, but at Dagway Proving Ground, and it's much, much more interesting and inspiring circumstances now than at that time. Now, this is a very special year for Ukraine. After a decision by the Verkhovna Rada, and then which was preceded by a referendum where instituted statehood, its independence, we have come a long way. After more than 400 years of being part of the Russian Empire and then one could say our Soviet Empire, it was not that easy to really return back to the family. The purpose, the reason that of a new state. When I remember back 1992, 93, I remember it as a time which could be closely associated with the time of pioneers. The time when decisions had to be taken on a spur of a moment, or should be taken in a very short time frame, where your future friends were sometimes behaving just like your enemy, just trying to show you around, push you around, and tell you that you are not important. Where the people whom you would not consider enemies sometimes played like ones, but you had to really understand the true motives. And to do so in a situation where you had no, or at least as a country, as institutionally had no real experience in international affairs. It was truly a challenging and unique time which any country can live but once. I think we have good results. I wanted to start with a bit of history. Back in 1992, Ukraine, back in 1991, when the decision was taken by Verkhovna Rada proclaiming independence, Ukraine actually for a few months continued actually to be part of the former Soviet Union. What we had at that time, we had still a Soviet command economy, no real democratic institutions. Now they were nascent and already developing. We had more than 1 million people in uniform, and our population is 50 million, so proportion is rather, I would say, warlike. We had hundreds and hundreds of strategic nuclear warheads which were tipped on intercontinental ballistic missiles aimed, as you might understand, on the United States, and who knows, maybe at this university. Now, university, rarely are targeted, but you are going to something more important. We had an agriculture actually ruined by 80 years of Soviet rule. We had more problems than we knew how to start to resolve them. But first and foremost for us, of the utmost importance was to preserve our independence, to build the base for becoming an esteemed, serious European state, to make sure that the question that Ukraine will continue to be sovereign and independent will not rise in anybody's mind.
I'm sorry, can you guys get in the back at all? Not really.
to do was really to find those in the world who would understand the importance of Ukraine, who is in the middle of Europe, and who we believe, and believe then, believe today, is a keystone in the arc of European security. The country which immediately came to mind then was the United States. But again, to remind, the last visit of President Bush to the former Soviet Union was in 1991, and he visited Ukraine. And at that time, he delivered a famous chicken a la Kiev, as it was called, the Kiev chicken speech, where he condemned the perils of nationalism, which was understood as condemning the idea of Ukrainian independence. And now Ukraine is independent, with all these nuclear weapons, with all these armed forces, and it was considered to be more of a threat than of an opportunity by the United States. Immediately we had to start on a road of very difficult negotiations with Washington and also with our Russian neighbors on what to do with them. We managed to make a very clear statement that it is our property. We don't want and we don't need to use them as weapons, but we would not hand them over for free. We would only do that for compensation, which would be adequate to the involvement of the Ukrainian resources, both material and human, in creation of these terrible weapons. We received a very moderate compensation as a result of a trilateral agreement which we signed in 1994. Accession to the NPT non-proliferation treaty. Difficult negotiations on the division of the Black Sea fleet, where our Russian friends, the government in Moscow, for a long time could not grasp why should they negotiate in the first place, and why the place where the fleet is based should not be Russian. It takes time, but we did it. We have established in the years that passed relationship with NATO, with European Union. Relations with NATO is based on the Charter on Distinctive Partnership with this organization. We do not ask to be admitted to this organization, as it would create less stability rather than more. But we cooperate very intensely, much more than many of the aspirant countries who have stated their desire to be in this organization. With the European Union, our desire is quite clear. We would like to be part of European Union as soon as practically possible. We understand it takes time. It takes serious effort, first of all, in reorganizing our economy and our legislation. But what is important, we have managed to pursue our strategic goal of returning back to Europe without creating major upheavals in our relations with Russian Federation. To create a system where we can responsibly work with both European Union, Russia and United States was our goal. It was not an easy task, but we believe we have been successful in that. In the meantime, Ukraine has managed to reform important sectors of its social, political life and its structures. The armed forces of Ukraine were downsized from, as I mentioned, close to 1 million to 300,000. And it was again not easy. What is more important is that these armed forces, while still based on a more or less Soviet formula, are being changed to reflect more European standards. In the meantime, we were also able to introduce new practices into government. duration of Ukrainian independence, we never had any violence used to solve internal disputes, internal differences. We have a track record of a peaceful, solid democracy, which is a new one, which is far from perfect, but which is working itself out within the framework of established rules of European democracy. That is as a background. Let me simply state once again what we try to achieve as a state and where we see the role of the Ukrainian-American relations in that. Ukraine sees itself as a European state which is destined to become part of Europe. We believe that there can be no completion of Europe without inclusion of Ukraine. Working through the partnership agreement with the European Union, we hope to achieve better cohesiveness with Europe. And at the same time, we need to continue our close cooperation with Russian Federation, from where we receive most of our energy resources, where many of the people of Ukraine are linked to their family ties, cultural ties. They don't want to be separated from Russia either. It's not easy to explain. It's not easy to find a formula how we can do it at the same time. Today we face a difficulty with the Europeans in a sense that they are more concentrated on resolving internal difficulties, internal disputes within the European Union itself, and they are at the same time struggling with the major questions of European security and defense identity, new membership, and somehow they believe that Ukraine or Ukrainian question can be relegated to distant future. We think it is not in the interest of Europe, it is not in our interest, it's not in the global interest not to see Ukraine on the radar screen in the medium-term perspective. And here comes the role of the United States on the strategic level. And it's from here, from Washington, but not only from Washington, where the strategic perspective is better seen. The United States is a global power, a country which twice in the last century got itself involved in 2 world wars just to prevent the disaster from happening. It is much more useful to invest in forward-looking formula which would bring those elements that are crucial for both European security and development of global economy today, to provide a roadmap for the countries in the greater European region to work together to this end, then later intervene when it was necessary to do so in the Balkans. For that, we have many factors working for both Ukraine and the United States. We have a history where we work together on nuclear issues, on establishing a very efficient system of export control which precludes any attempts to proliferate from the Ukrainian soil of any of the knowledges or technologies that we have for development of the weapons of mass destruction. And these are achievements which are widely recognized by those who deal with them in State Department and other governmental agencies. We have worked closely together in many parts of the world in the peacekeeping operations of the United Nations. And we worked hand in hand in the Balkans, where Ukraine has had a battalion from the very beginning of the conflict. now working together with the United States in the American sector, in Kosovo, within the Ukrainian Polish battalion, to preserve peace and to protect civilians there. We had, till the end of previous administration, a bilateral commission which worked efficiently to mobilize the resources of the governmental agencies to concentrate their efforts on the priority issues. We have now understanding that the more specific sectoral committees will continue to work together. It is a political dialogue, but also joint effort to move on reforms. We have a very good basis in our joint effort to help Ukraine move on with economic reform. The United States is a major shareholder in both the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. We have a specific program with both institutions, aimed at achieving goals which would help Ukraine become a real market economy. And last year we had substantial results. The economy grew, gross national product more than 6%, industrial output rose over 12%. Some of the sectors, including food processing, wood processing and other fully privatized sectors of the industry grew more than 30%. It became possible also through the support that we received in many instances through such agencies as the Treasury of the United States that gave signals to international financial institutions and to others. Ukraine has proven to be a serious partner for the United States in many instances where our vote, our voice was important for America. Now, for this year and for the last, we are non-permanent members of the Security Council. Last month we were holding the presidency of the Security Council. And exactly last month we had very serious issues on the Security Council, including resolutions on the Middle East, including situation in the Balkans and others. We didn't do it simply to please the United States, but our influence was crucial to have results which were appreciated by our American partners. Now, Ukraine, we believe, is not only consumer of security, but vice of systems. We are a contributor to European security, contributor to the efforts aimed at making the world more safe and more humane, if you wish. We have introduced a multitude of very serious proposals both in the United Nations and in European institutions aimed at creating a better environment on a global and regional scales. But today we need from our partner likewise understanding of what is happening here in Ukraine. Ukraine is facing internal problems. We have certain scandals, state scandal, the issue of the disappeared journalists. They have demonstrations in the country, most of them numbering 5,000-7,000. They have press which is criticizing the government and people who believe that changes could and should be introduced immediately. Now, if you ask me what is happening in Ukraine now, I would say that it is a clear demonstration that first democracy is viable. Certainly there are issues eager to do so. We need better understanding. We, on the other hand, will do everything on our side to demonstrate that Ukraine is not only in theory but in practice a real European democratic state. The future for Ukrainian-American relations, I believe, is bright. Whatever government will be here, will have to understand, and I'm convinced people in Washington do understand, that Ukraine has great potential, that it is a country which could be a link between Europe and Eurasia. It's a country that is the leading force in such a group as UAM, which unites Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, Azerbaijan, and Uzbekistan. Countries who are united by joint interest to continue to be independent and by common economic projects. It's a country that is crucial for the solution of the Transnistrian latent conflict, and which is active in finding a formula for a solution of an Abkhaz-Georgian conflict as such. We are eager and willing to work together. An economic area, the country is the major center of high technology industries. And here we can unite our efforts in a manner where each partner can bring with itself specific assets. The best example is a sea launch. I've just returned from Long Beach in Los Angeles, where you have a spectacular ship in the harbor. The ship there are two ships, a platform and a ship. And on a platform, some days during the year you can see a rocket erected for testing before the platform would sail into the Pacific Ocean for a start. It's a unique project where from the platform, satellites are launched on a platform built by Norwegians and operated by Norwegians. And the satellites from all over the world are being sent into orbit by Ukrainian rockets, and the project is managed by Boeing. The Boeing is doing management and marketing. We produce something we do know best, the rocket, which is the technological part, and by the way, Boeing up till now was not that good at doing that. It's only now when they bought another company that they start doing something about it. And part of it is Norwegian platform, and Russia is also involved for the last stage of this rocket, of this space launch vehicle, as it's called. So we can do something in a very technological field, but we also be very efficient in others. Let me sum up just to make sure that we have enough time to really answer your questions. Ukraine has come a long way. We are not a perfect democracy, but we are a democracy, and we don't believe that the future of Ukraine should be linked to a stability based on totalitarianism, but it should be based on democracy, which provides stability. It is a country which is a natural partner of the United States, and we have established formally strategic partnership. It is a country which is destined to return to Europe, but it can only return to fulfill this European destiny only with the assistance and help of the United States. I hope that relations between the regions, between universities, between people, your personal involvement with my country will help achieve this. It is a beautiful country.
to ask questions. Ambassador Gryshchenko has agreed to respond in the time that we have remaining.
Ambassador, will you please tell us a little bit about your country's relationship with the International Monetary Fund, and specifically, did the IMF play any role in the Ukraine's decision to join the ruble zone in 1992?
What? To join the ruble zone?
To join the ruble zone?
Well, it was so long ago that I don't remember whether we joined it, because I never seen a ruble after that, after 1990. Maybe we have joined something, but it was for a very short time. Essentially, what our relationship with the International Monetary Fund is negotiating on a program of a reform package that allows the IMF to provide structural support for structural reform in Ukraine. And, the IMF is not exactly the most popular institution. The only difference that before it was not popular mostly with recipient states, who believed that too much was asked of them. Now it is not also popular in Washington with the Treasury, which believes that it does not ask too much, or doesn't ask enough of them. So it's a situation where we work very closely not only with the IMF, but with the Treasury, just to find a formula which would allow us to move aggressively on the economic reform front, but also to preserve stability as much as possible. And we have certain also achievements here, because last year, for the first time in Ukraine, all the areas in the pensions and in salaries were fully closed. People do receive their salaries and pensions on time. They have achieved that in the year where they have not received a single penny from the International Monetary Fund, or for that matter, from any other financial institution. And we have achieved the growth, which I mentioned before, and these social achievements, where the price of oil has risen sharply. It clearly shows that after 9 years of a very difficult, again, economic situation, we have lastly started to move on. And it's the result not of the external assistance, but of internal in-depth reform, and the results are now visible.
What is the Ukraine's reaction toward the U.S. decision to build the defense shield?
Well, I understand the decision has not yet been taken, so that maybe you know more than I do. It's only the decision to go on to work on this decision. Essentially, our position is that we should not preclude what is inevitable, first, and second, which might be a matter of agreement between the United States and Russia. What is important that any decision should lead to strengthening of the general stability and security of all, instead of creating new tensions that could lead to a diminished stability and security for certain, at least in their imagination, for certain countries, and in the end would lead to diminished security to the United States itself. At least that's the formula that we follow. We don't believe in unilateral steps, but we hope that in the months to come, the administration here would have in-depth consultations with Europeans and with us, as we are successors to the Avian Treaty, just like Russia. Thank you.
Sir, do you see...
Try to speak the questions loudly enough so that they can be heard.
Sir, are there any changes or any results that will happen in Ukraine as a result of the protests which have been ongoing surrounding President Kuchma and the allegations against him?
Inevitably, it's a democracy, as I said, and the only thing that I would like to put it in perspective, what we we do have is a very democratic process where we have a tragic event which is totally unacceptable, which has to be investigated in a transparent manner, where all the legal avenues to do so should be used, and where the assistance of international community is welcome. Right now we have asked for such assistance from the FBI, and there are experts from FBI working in Kiev. There should be improvements in the work of the law enforcement agencies and as far as their efficiency. There might be improvements in how the parliament would work, where there is a clear need to have legislation on the majority and minority of in the parliament, the rights of opposition. That is something the parliament is working on right now. But what is even more important again is to return back to cooperation between the government, the majority in the parliament, and the president, which allowed us during the last year to enact legislation that, without which this results in economic growth, in economic transformation, in building civil society would have not been possible. And in that direction, many people are working right now in Kiev. Thank you.
Ambassador, you mentioned the importance of maintaining the relationship with Russia, and I was wondering if you believe there'd be any detrimental effects to that relationship should Ukraine be brought into the EU.
No, I don't think that if we were in the European Union, then this relationship would suffer much, or at all. European Union is obviously a political organization, but its main contact is economic development. It's creating greater cohesiveness among European nations. And Russian Federation has never stated its objection for any country to be admitted to European Union. All their objections are aimed against NATO. And that also is mostly could be explained by the role of a villain that was imposed by Soviet propaganda on NATO, as well as on the United States for that matter. So many people in Russian Federation still consider those two great entities as very enemy and entities for their interest, which is not reality. I think even in security area over time, these attitudes will change.
Questions?
There are, I know when I lived in Ukraine, there were a lot of miners and whatnot who had received payment for 3 months, a year, 2 years. How do you foresee that in the future as improving?
Now, as I've told you, I would like to re-emphasize it. Maybe the microphone wasn't working. There are no arrears anymore. That's exactly one of the achievements of the government during last year. More than that, the pensions were twice increased. They're still very small. But the mere fact that the people do receive them on time, and the government has resources to increase them at all, is a major element of reinforcing social stability and making government more popular than usually governments are. Because under the circumstances, it's not an easy task at all.
We'll have 1 or 2 minutes. Yeah.
Sir, could you comment on the relationship in the Ukraine between the Ukrainian culture and the Ukrainian language and the Russian culture and the Russian language?
It's a great relationship if you don't try to divide them and make them enemies. Because, take for example, a great, old, renowned writer, Gogol. He wrote in Russian because it was Russian Empire, and he was of German, but he felt himself Ukrainian. His mentality is Ukrainian. He is writing on Ukrainian subjects. He is one of the best, but where do you place him? And there is a very long list of people like that because they lived in a situation where I had to make different choices. I don't see any particular contradiction between two cultures. But what is important is to preserve Ukrainian culture, which never was supported in Russian times, in Russian imperial times, nor was it ever supported in Soviet times. It was the program of Russification which led to the situation where in major oblasts in the east of Ukraine, we either didn't have Ukrainian schools at all, or only had one or two chosen ones in the whole region. So one needs clearly to redress this situation. And, for example, in the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, nobody is considered to be able to enter the service if he doesn't speak Ukrainian and speaks well and writes well. But my explanation for that when I had interviews is very simple. If you are not able to master Ukrainian, what are you able to do? The languages are so close. So it's something that we need to redress. Ukrainian is widely spoken. It is a language more than half the population which uses it. But still, historically, it was almost annihilated, and by specific governmental actions, both Russian Empire and Soviet government. One needs to have a long-term view of that to help it return to its rightful place in Ukraine.
I think that's
There is one.
okay. We've got
Several ratings of corruption around the world have rated Ukraine fairly high. What achievements?
Low, I would say.
Oh, yeah. Serious problem in Ukraine. What programs and what achievements is the government making to battle corruption?
Now, the corruption, as we found out, really is unfortunate factor in all transformations, especially when it was a very tightly controlled system like the communist system. And when you introduce liberal rules, people take advantage of that. The principal approach right now is to combat corruption. You need to introduce as much transparency in economic life, and first of all, in the budgetary process. That is the best way to eradicate this large-scale corruption, or corruption that is really hindering investment. And for that, I can give you one example. There is large-scale privatization of Oblenergoski, large energy-generating companies. So only those corporations that can produce certificates of an internationally accepted audit, and the corporations that are not based in tax havens in offshore zones can take part in the contest. That's a major step to combat corruption. I have certain issue with some of these particular surveys because they're not scientifically based. They ask, for example, here American companies, their managers, managers, what do they think? And how many answers there? Corrupt, corrupt, corrupt. And they say corrupt, corrupt, corrupt. And then they ask somewhere from, let's say, Arabic Peninsula. And they know better than to say no there. So it's not corrupt. But for someone who travels around the world and knows the business practices in some of the regions of the world, it would be rather difficult to accept this particular placement of Ukraine. Again, my judgment is also not scientific.
On that hopeful assessment, I think we need to conclude. We thank you again, Mr. President. This is my mother.
I'm so happy to meet you.